It's almost that time of the year again. I'm talking about LeBron's annual roster overhaul, also known as the NBA trade deadline. The rumor mills go into overdrive and fans pray that their teams don't do something stupid, but a couple of GMs inevitably will do something that fits that description. With a few superstars potentially up for grabs, this year's Woj bombs might be the biggest ones we've seen in a while. With less than 3 weeks to go, let's check out the latest trade chatter from around the league. Number 10. James Harden leaving Brooklyn. One of the biggest recent NBA storylines is the reports of James Harden being unhappy in Brooklyn. Following the standard PR playbook, Harden denied the reports, but insiders around the league aren't buying it. There's growing belief that he could be moved before the trade deadline, so that the Nets don't potentially lose him for nothing if he becomes an unrestricted free agent. One of the rumors that has emerged from this saga is the return of the proposed Harden for Simmons swap that was the talk of the town a couple years ago. The craziest thing about the deal is that many people at the time believed that giving up Simmons for Harden isn't worth it for the 76ers. That take aged like fine milk, because Simmons has torpedoed his trade value since then, and Harden is as good as ever. Daryl Morey would probably do the deal in a heartbeat, but there's just no way that the Nets would agree to a straight-up swap. The Sixers would need to add sweeteners to the deal or bring in a third team. With Joel Embiid playing at the MVP level, they absolutely cannot afford to waste this season. But gutting their roster for Harden is something Morey can't do lightly. Number 9. Jeremy Grant on the move. The Detroit Pistons are a bad basketball team. There's no getting around that. Sure, they have some nice young pieces, but it's doubtful that they are a playoff team even when those guys develop. The playbook is simple. Tank and trade away anyone not named Cade Cunningham for picks and or prospects. Detroit will probably trade everyone they can in the next week or two. But one Piston has been talked about for a while now as a trade asset, Jeremy Grant. His reps have even given Detroit a list of teams he'd like to play for, and while his list isn't public, some of his wishes have been leaked. He reportedly wants to ink a long-term deal and go somewhere where he'll be a top 2 option in the offense. A couple of the contenders have expressed interest, but the team that probably best fits his requirements is Washington, since there's no clear-cut number 2 option behind Bradley Beal. The Lakers are reportedly out of the running, since a package centered around THT and Kendrick Nunn reportedly isn't enough to meet the asking price. Still, there are more than enough other teams lining up for the Pistons to get the price they want, so it's all but certain that Grant will not be a Piston before the trade deadline is up. Number 8. Simmons and Toby to the Kings. There probably is not a single NBA fan who isn't sick of the Ben Simmons rumors by this point, especially since Daryl Morey is looking for a Kings ransom in return for a player whose trade value is at an all-time low. Anyway, here's some more Ben Simmons rumors for your enjoyment. The latest reported idea involves packaging Simmons together with Tobias Harris to create a blockbuster trade. The issue with that, or rather the first in a long list of issues, is matching their $70+ million combined yearly salary. In other words, the Sixers need a desperate buyer. Enter the Sacramento Kings. After years of being mediocre at best, the Kings look ready to finally blow it all up. Good decision, except it's probably a couple of years late. Either way, some combination of Fox, Barnes, and Hield could work out in terms of matching salaries, but a nuclear trade like this would surely involve extra picks, less valuable players, or even a third team. The Kings get a hard reset of their core, and the Sixers surround Embiid with young talent that is eager to win. Sounds good in theory, but even if this does somehow happen, you just know the Kings would find some way to screw it up. Number 7. Miles Turner finally on the move. Go ahead and type Miles Turner trade rumors into Google and stare in amazement at how many times this dude has been connected to various deals and rumors. Props to the man for being an absolute pro and playing with 100% effort throughout, but it's hard to believe that he's still on the Pacers. High motor, elite rim protectors that always hit the 3 are always in demand, and it looks like this will be the year when a Turner trade finally happens. At least it was looking like that until a foot injury made everyone hesitant. Nobody wants to give up a prized asset for a big man with an injured foot, and Indiana isn't settling for anything less than prized assets in return. The old saying rings true. However, there's always a team desperate enough to pull the trigger. It's common knowledge that the Hornets need an upgrade at the center to solidify what's currently looking like a playoff berth. NBA insiders can already feel the trade winds in the air, so it's probably just a matter of time until Ye Woj bomb finally drops on this deal. Number 6. Wall gets swapped for Westbrook. Again. You've already heard the saying, there's always a team desperate enough. Allow me to introduce a second universal truth of NBA trades. There's no such thing as an immovable contract. By all metrics, Russell Westbrook has fallen short of expectations in LA, and his contract is looking even worse than before, if that's somehow possible. The Lakers need a different third star for their team, but their list of trade assets would fit on a single sheet of toilet paper, so there isn't much room for maneuver. Still, you remember that recent trade between the Rockets and the Wizards, where they swapped two immovable contracts in John Wall and Westbrook. Why not do that again? John Wall was shut down by the Rockets a while ago, and he wants to play. Unlike Westbrook, he can hit the three at a decent rate, and he can avoid turning the ball over 23 times a game. The Rockets want to get rid of him, and they'll probably take on Westbrook if he comes with a pick and maybe a younger player. Looks like the only question is if LA's GM Rob Pelinka is willing to admit that they should move on from Brody. Number 5. Domantas Sabonis leaving Indiana? The Pacers are a cursed franchise. There's no denying that. Their best players are too good for the team to be stuck in the cellar of the Eastern Conference. That's why it's looking like a total clearance sale in Indiana right now. And that includes Sabonis. The young all-star center is by far the team's best trade asset, and he stands to bring in a bounty of picks and/or promising prospects in return. The market is there, and it's huge. But we have to question the wisdom of the move. Sure, the team is bad, but that's not Sabonis' fault. The guy's averaging 19, 12, and 5 on 58% shooting. Still, Indy brass seem to have made up their minds on blowing it all up. So it's all but given that we'll be watching Domantas torch teams wearing a different jersey after the deadline. Number 4. Portland hosts a fire sale. The only reason why Portland hasn't been tanking for the past couple of years is that Dame didn't allow it. He even played and struggled through most of this season with a lingering abdominal injury that required surgery. Well, he finally decided to call it quits for the season and get his health under control. Translation: Portland is allowed to tank for the rest of this year. Word around the league is that no player except Dame is untouchable. Depending on how crazy they want to get, we could see a whole new team in Portland in just a few weeks. Yusuf Nurkic is probably the most likely outgoing player, and they may even decide to part ways with McCollum. Those two alone can bring a hefty return, but it will be interesting to see what Portland asks for. They own their 2022 first rounder, so they will probably target win-now guys that they pair up with a prospect they pick in the lottery. That pick is also an interesting asset to dangle in front of teams, but it's just too valuable to trade away. If that pick gets traded, it better be for a superstar, or I could see someone in the front office getting fired. Number 3. Celtics make Horford and Smart available. If you've heard just one piece of news about the Celtics this year, it's probably something about them either being dysfunctional or underachieving. Something needs to be done, but they're not yet willing to break up their duo of Tatum and Brown, even if it's not yet 100% clear that they can exist on the floor at the same time. Their solution looks to be trading Horford for a center that will be more involved in the offense. If your first thought when hearing that was, well, what about the Time Lord? He's already on the team. You're not alone. Marcus Smart is also rumored to be on the trade block. I'd love to be wrong here, but it's looking like the only thing that will change in Boston is their defensive rating, and probably not in the direction that they were hoping for. Number 2. Atlanta dealing John Collins. Sticking with the theme of teams that are horribly underachieving this season, the Atlanta Hawks. While the Celtics are at least in the playoff picture, the Hawks are 2 spots behind the play in tournament. They're obviously not trading Trey. However, that's not the case with their second best player, John Collins. That trade has been in the cards for a while now. There are rumors that Atlanta is looking for a starting caliber player and a valuable first rounder in return. That's a good haul. But word around the league is that the final return will probably be higher than that. Dallas and San Antonio have had their sights set on Collins for a while now. Out of those two, San Antonio is richer in trade assets, but plenty of other teams are willing to throw their hats into the ring. Number 1. Goran Dragic to Dallas. Goran Dragic ending up in Toronto was a bad situation for him. He can still be a contributor on a playoff contender, but he doesn't fit Toronto's timeline, and he played just a handful of games for the Raptors. In terms of trade assets, his $19 million expiring deal is worth its weight in gold to teams looking to shed some salary in preparation for chasing big-name free agents or to avoid the dreaded luxury tax. Still, the Dallas Mavericks have been strongly linked to a trade for Dragic, not because of his expiring contract, but rather because of his strong ties to franchise centerpiece Luka Doncic. Many insiders are surprised that this deal hasn't happened already, so it's probably just a matter of time. That's it for this video. Which trade are you looking forward to your team making this season? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Thanks for watching NBA Zone.